Hey friends, welcome back. I realized after my last video that it was the 20th video and I hadn't even done anything to celebrate that, so I missed that whole milestone. But don't worry, in the future when I have video birthdays or whatever, we're gonna do some fun stuff. There's some big changes coming up and I'll do some like giveaways and some collaborations and cool things like that. So keep watching because there's some really fun stuff in the future. Today I have a book review for you for The Possessions by Sarah Flannery Murphy. It's my book of the month from February of this year. This was a dark, seductive thriller that honestly kept me on the edge of my seat while I was reading it. Although I will say I had some big problems with it, so maybe this video is finally proof that I don't love every single book that I pick up. And you'll find out why after the intro. Roll the intro! The Possessions is about a woman named Edie who works for the Elysian Society. It's a company that hires people who act as mediums for people who come in, like clients who come in and want to speak to their dead loved ones and have them channeled through one of these mediums. And the mediums take a pill called the Lotus Pill, which basically makes them an empty, hollow shell of a person who can then contact this dead loved one, and like the dead person like speaks through their body to the loved one who's still alive, the client. But the medium can't hear any of that. The medium is completely just gone at that point. And what they do is the clients bring one of the possessions of their loved one who's dead and give it to the medium so that the medium can like use that to help channel that person to them. So that's kind of where that title comes from, also from the fact that like they're being basically possessed by a ghost at that point. So the central plot basically is that Edie meets a man who comes in, and his wife died like 6 years ago in a drowning accident, and he comes to contact her through Edie, and they start to have this relationship through this company, basically, where she's his medium and he speaks to his wife through her. But they start to blur the lines of professionalism. You know, they start to get closer to each other, they become better friends, and you can see through the book that this whole situation becomes problematic for them, because when someone that you love is dead and you're contacting them through a medium, you start to get attached to that person because you're constantly talking to your dead loved one through them. So that's basically where the thriller plot comes in. You start to learn secrets, and the wife's death comes into question, and you start to learn all these like weird, creepy things that people are keeping under wraps in the story. So that's kind of where the whole central plot comes in. Although in general I wasn't completely in love with this book, there were a few things that I really liked about it. One of those things was the fact that Murphy as an author really trusts her reader. So a lot of the story is kind of left up to your own perceptions and your own kind of coloring of the story. So instead of filling in all the details for us, Murphy kind of lets you just make your own conclusions. There are some like little snippets and clues that are given to you as a reader that you will only catch really if you're a close reader. So there's kind of a part where a minor character, you kind of get a hint that this person may have had like an eating disorder. But the thing is, Murphy never actually comes out and says it, and neither do the characters, but there's some hinting done. And I really appreciate it when an author trusts their own writing and trusts the reader enough to not spell everything out for you. And Murphy does that really well in this book. Another thing that I really enjoyed about this book was that Murphy has a good sense of place when she's writing. So when she describes the Elysian Society, or when she describes Edie's apartment, she does so in a way that really gives a creepy vibe to the book. So the Elysian Society is basically like all white, and it feels very empty and soulless, despite the fact that there are literal ghosts, you know, coming into this place, right? And it gives off this kind of like sterile, uncomfortable vibe. And the same goes for Edie's apartment, which feels very impersonal. It feels barren. It doesn't feel like a cozy, happy place to be. And so I feel like Murphy uses her settings very well to establish the fact that this is a thriller, that this isn't a book that you're going to get cozy with at all. One of the things that I really didn't love about this book was the fact that the ending was a huge disappointment for me. So the whole book was this great thriller that kept me on the edge of my seat, kept my heart pounding, and the way the book was described, you kind of think like, okay, so everything's going to come to a head at the end of this book, and it's going to be crazy, and I'm going to be like freaking out. And it kind of felt like the story ended 20 pages before the book did. So I get to like almost the end of the book, and I feel like, oh wow, like this is pretty big, like this is a big ending. And then the book just kind of keeps going, and it felt a little bit directionless at the end, and it just kind of didn't feel like a thriller at that point. So for me, the whole book up until the very end is like a thriller, and so I just kind of felt a little bit lost at the end of the book, and I was wondering why there was still a story going on, because it didn't feel necessary at all. Another thing that I wasn't crazy about in this book is the fact that the writing was almost a little too sparse for my taste. And I did like the fact that Murphy really trusted us as readers, like I said, but I don't like the fact that a lot of the story felt ambiguous, and it just kind of felt like, oh, I'm leaving this up to the reader's interpretation, but in a very pointless way, in my opinion. Like, it was kind of done in a way that made me feel like the author wasn't really quite sure what she was trying to say at certain times. So there were just points in the story where I think she was trying to be so poetic and literary with her writing that she kind of lost the story she was trying to tell. And I think that even if your writing's beautiful or interesting, if you lose your story, you lose your reader. The other big disappointment for me in this book was actually Edie as a character, and it's unfortunate because it's hard when you have a book where the main character isn't really meant to be that likable, but it's just really hard as a reader to read those books. So Edie is kind of boring in my opinion, and she's like a paper doll. There's really no personality there. She's not very interesting. She doesn't really do anything or really have any strong opinions about anything. She just, and it makes sense because her character is meant to be a shell for these ghosts that come through her, and that makes sense. And there is a purpose to that. There is a purpose to the fact that Edie is not a very interesting character, that she doesn't really have a lot going for her. But as a reader, even if that is purposeful, it makes it harder to read about the character, and it makes it a lot harder to care about what's going on in the story. So I wish that Murphy had found a way to kind of balance Edie's need to be this empty character that can take on these other personalities through these other ghosts and stuff, but also make her a character that we can actually care about, because it's hard to read a book where you don't really care about the main character. If the main character is kind of hateable, that's one thing, but as long as you care about them, it's okay. I think that Murphy could have solved this if she had made it so that Edie would have vulnerable moments in private. It makes sense that Edie can't have these vulnerable moments in front of anybody because she's very private as a person, but if we had seen moments where she is sad or contemplating life in private, where we see like those deep dark sides of her, I think that it would have been easier to sympathize with her as a character. But as is, you just don't really care about her. I didn't really have any attachment to her at all. I felt no emotion for her. And that makes the book a lot harder to read. I really kept reading because it was a pretty exciting book. Overall, even though I didn't dislike reading this book, there isn't really enough in it that I loved that makes me want to recommend it to anybody. I mean, if you're in the mood for a thriller that is going to keep you engaged, this is a great book for that, but I don't think it's the most well-written book I've read in a while, and I definitely don't think it's the most well-written thriller I've read in a long time. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it. It's just kind of in the middle for me. And so, if you want to pick it up and you're really into thrillers and ghost stories, you might really like this book because it kind of has some like conspiracy theory aspects to it. It's pretty cool. But if you're someone who's kind of looking for a character-driven book, this is definitely not the book for you because the characterization is a little bit too ambiguous in this book. So if that's what you're going for, just don't pick this one up. Thanks so much for watching my review of The Possessions by Sarah Flannery Murphy. I hope that if you do pick up the book, you'll let me know what you think about it in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye. I am at fault for judging books by their cover because I really like the cover of this book, but guess what? It's even prettier on the inside. I just made the book naked. But look how pretty it is. It's like all pink and white. And when I see it, my eyes go, awooga, awooga. Awooga, awooga.